Naskaya and Shin enjoyed such relaxing moments throughout the afternoon. Passions of desire exploded with each vigorous rhythm of Naskaya's movement. He shouldn't have had to hide his ambition to own such a beautiful treasure. Outside Surin's workplace and residence, she picked up a military map and looked at it intently, thinking about Naskaya's upcoming operation, while listening to a guard report that Lady Shin had come to his room during taboo hours. Surin rolled her nonchalant face, showing no particular attitude, scolding the guard for telling them not to let anyone into Naskaya's room but her. The guard confessed that Lady Shin was really too assertive for them to do anything else. Hearing this, Surin gave a puzzled smile. Assertive? A master of politics easily judges the servant who helped Shin so that she can forcefully step over the guard fence. That Taisha must have had a hand in it, she thought, smiling a tolerant preacher at the guard in front of her. She ignored all responsibility for the guards today. Lady Shin has been like that. That sentence alone was enough to raise Shauna's position markedly in the heart of the guard, who was already familiar with Surin's orders. You reported very well, and I am very relieved to have you here. Woo, thanks to your efforts later. Surin placed his hand on the guard's shoulder, encouraging him slowly. The light of the great man made the little guard suddenly overwhelmed, full of devotion and admiration, and smirked. Surin said and walked away, leaving Wu, the young guard, happily touching his hand on the shoulder blade where Surin had just placed it. What a great honor. Surin just turned his back, immediately turned off the celebrity's smile, raised his eyes to look at the bright sunlight above. His eyes darkened, gritted his teeth slightly. Naskaya, just enjoy. People dare to take the name of God, you will never have anything in your hands, your country, your honor, even your wife. The next day, in the Naskaya Lord's office, everyone was meeting to discuss plans to conquer new lands. On the military map, large areas of land appear and Shin is asked by Surin to find out where the food and weapons of the enemy army are hidden. Surin's hawk-like gaze was hovering around Shin's head, making it impossible for her to focus. She was really worried and felt pressure about it. Fortunately, Mr. Naskaya always stood by and watched her, encouraging her that if it is too difficult, we can use other resources for the campaign. You do not need to stress too much. If she can do it, it's fun. Shin calmed down and calmly observed. She slowly observed and saw the sight of the people in that land storing food, as clearly as if it were in front of her. Looks like here. Shin placed his hand lightly on a spot on the map, waiting for the reaction of the people beside him. Surin almost exclaimed, asking her a series of "Oh. Really, how are they doing? What is the size of the army? How many months do you think the army's food will last, and more?" Shin honestly said she didn't understand anything about the military, so she couldn't judge and explain what she saw. This made Surin quite excited. Yes, that's right, so let's just take it. Shin watched Naskaya and Surin stand side by side discussing the battle, feeling quite sorry and self-reproachful. If only she had been more knowledgeable, it would have been much easier. Shin tried to look at the map again, using all her abilities to use the dragon eyes she had just been practicing. The observation made her feel dizzy. Shin suddenly stopped, raised her face. Mr. Naskaya stopped and asked her, "What's wrong?" Shin said tentatively, "I didn't see anything, but it looks like my father is coming." One coming? Naskaya muttered softly in her mouth. He was much more concerned than she was about the news. Her father, Patriarch One of Chong, was cunning and domineering. As soon as he raised the teacup, he said coldly, "The smell of tea is so strong, can't you make the right tea that I like?" Shin trembled and said, Why did you suddenly come here? I didn't have enough time to prepare." The father immediately snapped, "Are you blaming me?" then leaned back and whined, "After all, nothing has ever pleased me about you. Besides, why are you leaving this traitor by your side when I talk?" Taisha laughed provocatively, "Because Naskaya is worried you're going to do something." "Go away, vulgar bastard. I don't have the strength to listen to that anymore, he snapped. Oh, Shin tells Tae-sha, I'll be okay, go out for a while. This sentence made Tae-sha let out a low voice and bowed to her and walked out. The story of the biological father begins with the loving inquiry of the good father, is there an heir? Oh, Shin was both sad and scared and said, yes, that. The father set the teacup down on the table, couldn't hide his unnerved expression and said, why haven't you thought about it yet? When have you thought about it? My relationship with him is still very good. Oh, Shin tried to discriminate. Oh, one clenched his fist, stupid little one, why don't you still understand that? What kind of man would share his woman with someone else? Aren't you bored with me? If not having a child is a bond, he will abandon you when it is no longer valid. Oh, Shin didn't believe her father's words, but this was like a cut into a closed wound in her heart, causing it to be exposed. In fact, Mr. Naskaya kept his distance from her, not wanting to have children with her. So was he really going to abandon her? At this time, Tae-sha appears, informing him that Naskaya wants to meet with Patriarch Oh-won. He called me to do something, Oh-won muttered, he hadn't even berated his daughter enough. Tae-sha laughed and leaned into the old man's ear, whispering, I don't know what he'll do when he calls you. Oh-won left, leaving Oh-shin sitting there in contemplation. Tae-sha sat down opposite her, his middle-aged demeanor calming her. Allow me to speak frankly, it seems that Naskaya is quite interested in Mrs. Oh-shin. Thank you, Oh-shin replied nonchalantly, how do you know that? Tae-sha recounted the events leading up to her marriage. In her homeland, the Cheong River region, about 100 years ago, when the emperor died without an heir, a war for the throne ensued, and the bloodshed continued for a long time. A few decades later, Oh-won, her father, oppressed the remaining tribes to seize power and mistreated those not born into his tribe. He stole money, drove them out of the land he claimed, causing chaos and resentment among the people. The conflict between the tribes persisted. One day, a messenger arrived to inform them that the chief of the Cheongwon tribe wanted to offer tribute, but Oh-won refused, despite the strength of the Cheong tribe's army. Oh-won, without blinking, ordered the messenger, Cheongwon is getting old and doesn't have a son yet, so send Oh-shin there to marry and make peace. I will then become his father-in-law, who knows what benefits we might gain. As soon as he finished speaking, Tae-sha, who had been standing beside Oh-won, slammed his hand on the table. Trying to remain calm, he gritted his teeth and asked, what are you talking about? You know Cheongwon is ruthless, why send Miss Oh-shin there? Oh-won, with a cold glare, responded, so should I lead the troops into battle? If sending Oh-shin there can solve everything, then let's do it. He added with apparent concern, I know you care a lot about Oh-shin, or more precisely, because you love Nara, Oh-shin, her daughter, is of special interest to you. I don't intend to discuss your peculiar taste in women, now that you're getting old. I know you're here for that woman, she doesn't mean anything to me anymore. If you want, I'll send her to you every night. Top of form. As soon as he finished his sentence, Tae-sha lifted Oh-won into the air with one hand, struggling to break free. Tae-sha's fiery and angry gaze was ready to choke Oh-won immediately. What did you just say? Say it again. Try treating Nara poorly and see what happens. Moments later, everything returned to normal, and Tae-sha resumed his lazy patrol within the castle. A servant rushed in, reporting that there were unfamiliar people in the streets. Tae-sha stepped out to observe and saw the leaders of the newcomers to the tribe. Asking about the identity of the strangers, he chuckled lightly at Tae-sha, how long do you plan to keep the guests waiting? You people truly lack manners. Tae-sha observed the unfamiliar face, a tall and robust figure with a deep voice, presumably someone not to be underestimated. Lowering his voice, the man said, it seems you've been too noisy to become a guest, huh? The guards outside had already been dealt with. The woman beside him spoke with composure. So you must be the intruder, Tae-sa remarked. A servant rushed over to confirm that the guards had been eliminated. At this point, the unfamiliar woman bowed and introduced their identities. This is the ruler of the East, Lord Naskaya. Naskaya smiled and said, I didn't come here to punish. I came for peace, through marriage. The strange entourage proceeded into the main house of O1. Quickly, a feast was arranged, a grand banquet in the garden of the chief O1's tribe. O1 joyfully raised his wine glass to invite Naskaya, introducing one of his daughters, a beautiful girl brought out to offer to Naskaya in exchange for peace. Top of form. Seeing Naskaya's indifferent expression, O1 continued, saying that if he didn't like this daughter, he had others to choose from. Without waiting for Naskaya's response, a servant brought in all the remaining daughters in the house. Naskaya remarked, I heard you have another daughter. Despite O1's explanation that the unmarried daughters were present, and the others were already married, Naskaya's patience was waning. He said, don't make me say more. I need that other daughter, whether she's married or not is of no concern to me. O1, terrified, looked at the imposing figure before him. Despite his disdain for Naskaya's legendary cruelty, he knew he couldn't defeat him. He reluctantly complied with the request. At this moment, Tae-sa, the troublemaker, stepped forward, laughing, I heard you're not interested in other girls, so who are you looking for? Oh Shin? Naskaya muttered a few names that Tae-sa listed, stopping at Oh Shin's name, saying that he liked that name. Tae-sa thought it was a good way to save Oh Shin from being sent as an offering to Changwon and avoid a war between this tribe and the Chung tribe. He began to elaborate more on this marriage, revealing that Oh Shin's mother originally belonged to the Changwon tribe. That's why Oh Shin was sent there to seek an alliance. Upon hearing the name Changwon, Naskaya was well aware of his cruelty. How could the young girl endure him? And so, Naskaya chose her as the spoils of this peace agreement. Tae-sa, skeptical, asked, but how do I know you're any better than Changwon? Both of you are not much different, using force to get what you want, spreading hatred wherever you go. Even without your help, I would still achieve what I want, Naskaya replied with a faint smile. Tae-sa, resolute, stared at him and said seriously, then you will never meet Miss Oh Shin, as she is the most cherished. If you want her, you have to kill me, and I won't obediently die. In response to this challenge, Naskaya didn't show anger. He calmly replied, Changwon is a lawless man, and I'm not sure I'm better than him in this regard. On the contrary, I've caused more resentment than he has on the path I've taken. I will cherish Oh Shin, I won't take another wife. If she gives me a son, no, I will give the child everything I have. Tae-sa looked up at the sky, satisfied, then bowed down and knelt before his new master. I am Tae-sa, I have someone to protect. I hope you will allow me to go to the east. If you agree, I will bring Miss Oh Shin here on horseback. That was the entire story that had unfolded, unbeknownst to her until now. Oh Shin was surprised and deeply moved by the things Tae-sa had just revealed. She sincerely admitted that she didn't understand much about Naskaya, despite being his wife for some time. Tae-sa mentioned that Lord Naskaya is an unpredictable person, enigmatic. Love for him is not about understanding, no matter how deep the love is, there are still aspects that cannot be comprehended. Therefore, Mrs. Oh Shin doesn't need to worry too much. After finishing the story, Oh Shin sat alone in the study, examining maps and learning how to read them. She pondered, isn't love about understanding? Does nobody understand Lord Naskaya? What about Surin? She must understand him well, right? Lost in thought, the sound of Naskaya knocking on the door interrupted her. As he entered, he approached her closely. Why are you here? Oh Shin asked. I have something to ask you, Naskaya said, leaning in close. What is it? Oh, Shin asked again. Naskaya chuckled, it's nothing. It would be amusing to you, and you wouldn't understand. Oh, Shin nodded, seems about right. Oh, Lord Naskaya, wait, has my father spoken to you about marriage? Naskaya didn't answer, burying his face in Oh Shin's chest. The warmth through the delicate embroidered fabric made him feel secure. It smells nice, Oh Shin. Lord Naskaya, what if someone sees us? At least do it in the bedroom. Naskaya was lost in the pleasure of true intimacy, not caring about who might enter behind that door anymore. After all, he had closed it, and who would enter a room with only a married couple, and the door was already closed. Naskaya recalled what his father-in-law had just said. He introduced another girl of marriageable age, hoping to offer her as a wife to Naskaya. Naskaya was furious. As a ruler for a long time, he understood the intentions of his father-in-law well. Did you say that to Oh Shin? How could you say that to her? Even if my wife is not pregnant, I have no intention of taking another wife. Oh One at that time tried to persuade Naskaya further, stating that a young couple without children would be a subject of gossip, which was a common viewpoint. Naskaya had exceeded the limits of restraint. Gritting his teeth, he said, people like you, don't let me catch you. As he turned away, Naskaya added, behave well and live peacefully in the Chung River. Walking away, Naskaya pondered on One's words. Naskaya had truly betrayed the promise not to abandon Oh Shin when he allowed her to marry the dragon god, just to obtain dragon eyes. With the wolf god's curse that Naskaya would lose everything, Surin suggested bringing Oh Shin to marry the dragon god Cheonwi, as Oh Shin was the one Cheonwi desired. It was the best way to keep the dragon eyes by his side. Naskaya had agreed to that suggestion. And now, he faced the fear, the guilt that drove him mad. He feared losing his wife. Naskaya had come here to find her and couldn't restrain the desire to possess her, a beautiful body. Naskaya was above Oh Shin, feeling that he needed to see things from a different perspective, as children could think differently. For Naskaya, children were a source of memories that always terrified him. The child swelling in the belly of the woman and gradually gnawing at their bodies. Lord Naskaya asked Oh Shin with a playful tone, we don't need children, do we? Naskaya didn't answer, burying his head in her chest. Like a child, he greedily swallowed those two soft pink knobs, his hand clutching the rest of the soft white. When she was about to go inside, the stiff and shiny knob was ready for its task. Oh Shin resisted slightly, don't want to. When Naskaya stopped to look for an excuse, she said, I don't mean to refuse, otherwise if you don't want to have children, what do you hug me for? Naskaya snapped back to reality, covering his mouth, feeling nauseous. He remembered the feeling he had tried so hard to forget every time he was with his wife. The sight of his mother writhing with the child in her belly, her desperate cries for help echoing, and the entity inside her gnawing at her day by day until his mother died. It was a lifelong haunting for Naskaya. I'm sorry, please stop, he said, flustered, trying to maintain composure. Unfortunately, the joy hadn't even started yet. That was my thought if I were Oh Shin waiting downstairs. But Oh Shin was only thinking about how to bridge the gap between them. Naskaya left, while Oh Shin quietly returned to her room. She stood outside the small garden, gazing and shedding tears. At that moment, Cheonwi appeared like a divine light, comforting her. Initially, she resisted, but her young husband was quite sensitive. He said he would be sad if she continued to cry like that. Oh Shin. Cheonwi said they needed to talk to understand each other better because they were husband and wife. Instead of silently enduring, she could confide in him. Oh Shin began to compare the words of her two husbands. The older one said, you can't understand this, while the younger one said, we need to talk to understand each other. She chose to listen to the younger husband and told him about her experience with Naskaya. Truly, he was a strange person. Cheonwi nodded and spoke, avoiding her issue. He truly just scanned his eyes and saw Naskaya's unpleasant memories, making him reluctant to get closer to his wife. I don't know why he acts that way, but treating you like that is not okay. Oh, Shin is also his wife. Cheonwi spoke and lifted a strand of her hair gently, saying, if it were me, I wouldn't do that. Besides, our child will probably be as cute as Oh Shin. I would consider it an honor. Because you and Oh Shin are husband and wife. Dragons are always cunning like that. His words moved Oh Shin to tears of gratitude as she leaned on Cheonwi's awaiting embrace. Don't cry, Oh Shin, this is not your fault. Let's go and have some fun, Cheonwi said, lifting her into the room. At this moment, in a wide courtyard in front of Naskaya's palace, he was practicing archery, but none of his arrows hit the target. Taesa approached, mocking him, you dress so beautifully just to shoot arrows here? Shouldn't you be with Lady Oh Shin? You can't concentrate here, go to her. Naskaya grumbled, you're too meddlesome today. Is it because you're still single until now? Taesa retorted while rearranging the arrows that had just been shot, you know my circumstances. Besides, you're talking about someone else's matters while still being single yourself. After a few more arguments, Taesa said seriously, I apologize for the comparison, but you should learn from Surin. However, I must say, it seems you trust her too much. What do you mean? Naskaya asked, wary. It's hard to believe she is loyal to you. It wouldn't be surprising if she had some ulterior motives, Taesa continued. I know, Naskaya interrupted, but once Surin is under my command, I have to trust her. Taesa wasn't foolish, he returned to the initial topic. You should apply this flexibility to Lady Oh Shin as well. You don't understand her feelings. Naskaya fell silent, Taesa's arrow had truly struck his heart. He recalled the feeling of embracing Oh Shin, her silky hair, smooth skin, the enticing curves of her wet body, all of it driving him mad, especially her deep, alluring eyes, impossible to ignore when thinking about possession. Naskaya remembered the past when Oh-One was extremely cruel, attacking everywhere, and Naskaya vowed to kill him. In a battle near the Chang River, Naskaya encountered Oh Shin's mother, who was young at the time, and saved her. The amber-colored eyes of Oh Shin's mother remained etched in his mind. Snapping out of those memories, Naskaya shot an arrow hitting the target. That's enough for today, let's stop here, he said decisively and walked straight to Oh Shin's palace. Approaching the door of her room, Naskaya had initially gathered enough determination to share his inner turmoil with her and complete some unfinished business. However, inside the room, the two of them were engrossed in their own busy activities. Disgruntled, Naskaya turned away. Despite convincing himself that his wife is only with one husband, Naskaya's hand still clenched tightly as he walked away, instructing his subordinates not to tell her that he had come. Inside the room, Cheonwi took care of Oh Shin attentively. They lay lazily on the bed, with Cheonwi braiding a string for her. This is the first time you've seen this type of braid, right? It's the kind commonly used in the south for making baskets. If you like it, I can teach you, he said. Excited, Oh Shin exclaimed, how does Cheonwi know about this? Have you traveled to many places? I've seen everything in the universe while still in the egg. I'll tell you, Oh Shin, you'll see it too when you get used to using these eyes. I'll explain everything to you then. Oh Shin turned to Cheonwi and asked, do you know about the future? I'm curious about the future. Can you talk about it? Her eyes went from innocent to skeptical, then froze. Cheonwi explained that she had glimpsed the future before, and he asked her to forget about the dark and painful things because the future would gradually change. Lying next to her, Cheonwi waited, and Shin said, Cheonwi, you also have many things you want to change, right? Cheonwi lowered her face closer to her, saying, my destiny is not to see Shin and freeze to death. Shin's face widened and thought, that's really hard to change. Yes, but it's not still alive. Cheonwi hugged her and placed her on top of him, happily saying, you'll do it, you're good at what you think, so don't be afraid of what will happen. Being in the world is already an accomplishment. The dragon god succeeded in reassuring his and Naskaya's mutual wife. What needed to be done now was to enjoy it. Cheonwi began kissing Shin, sweeping the inside of her mouth with his tongue. His hands cupped her long, smoky curls. In a split second, their clothes were stripped clean by him. In Cheonwi's hand was a small cloth bag, which he opened and smiled happily. It looks like this thing will be very useful. Small seeds like red beans are completely put in the mouth to eat. My father-in-law gave it to me, so I have to eat it all. Maybe I'm going to give it to the other guy. Cheonwi is a real god and not like that Naskaya. Well, my wife said that and gave it to me, Cheonwi said triumphantly. Cheonwi leaned closer to Shin and said, stupid, and leaned down to kiss her hard. Shin dreamily removed his face and asked, stupid? Isn't Cheonwi a real god? Cheonwi stared at her passionately, his face and body full of life beneath him urging him not to go any further. For real, and quickly took possession of her bottom. Meanwhile, Shin innocently asked, Cheonwi isn't a god, is it? But why lie? But at this time, Cheonwi was too preoccupied with her breasts, too full and seductive. Cheonwi grabbed it with her whole hand and began to enjoy it with her tongue. Shin groaned, wait, there's something in my stomach, it's hot and it's uncomfortable. These strange feelings make Shin both strange and want to experience more. She shamelessly covered her hand over her face, letting Cheonwi do whatever he wanted. Looking at her shy face, Cheonwi stroked her lower body with his tongue with all the passion and technique of the whole universe he had ever seen. After having her first orgasm, Shin was placed on her stomach by Cheonwi, continuing to go inside her in that position. He said Shin didn't need to hide his moans, just squealed and relaxed. Just like that, small cries came from her throat, making Cheonwi extremely excited. He always had the freshest ways to synchronize the rhythm between them. Although Shin just lay still, the slight tugs from her body made them both really happy. The minutes of joy went on and on. This is the latest update of the story. The complexities of the characters' psychology make readers seem a bit of a headache. It seems a little deviant from today's social moral standards, and please put yourself in that parallel world. Love you guys. Your reception will be my motivation to create new videos. Thank you very much.